What a golden age to be a photographer. You've got top flight photographers trying to get a few extra quid by doing videos on YouTube and giving away all their secrets. That's all we should say. So, you've just got a new camera, but you don't know how the bloody thing works. Well, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you might ask? My name's Alan Schaller. I'm a professional photographer, specialise in black and white. I'm a Leica ambassador, co-founder of SPI, and I founded this app that you might want to have a look about. These are the basic techniques you need to know, and also the things you should probably have in your camera bag to get the most out of your photographic journey. Let's get involved. Look at this. Oh yeah, you know what that means. We did it. We hit 100K. Couldn't have done it without you. If we want to get to 1 million, we need you. So please subscribe. These videos take ages to make, and it would mean such a lot if you could just like, comment, or subscribe to this video. Anyway, we live in a golden age of knowledge and information, but it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, I would say. There's so many conflicting things online about you should do this, try this, buy this. It's exhausting, and I think it can be a little bit confusing. This episode is for real mastering the basics, right? So I'm going to say I don't want people who have been shooting for 20 years going, oh my God, I know this already. Fine, watch something else. Or keep watching and see if there's something you didn't know. Maybe there's something I know that you don't. Our sponsor for this video is Storyblocks. Thank you, Storyblocks, for supporting the channel. So we try and do as many shots in our videos as we can ourselves. Sometimes we think we've wrapped the video, and then in the edit, we're having a look through and we're like, oh, it'd be really nice to chop it and change it by adding a helicopter shot over London, or maybe some aperture blades filmed down a lens. But there are some things that are just too difficult, too time consuming, too expensive to do ourselves. And that's why we use Storyblocks to help us with the making of these videos. This one. Storyblocks is an unlimited source of content and gives you the freedom to test, experiment, and create more effective videos. The stock library is constantly being updated by curators within Storyblocks who are commissioning this work to reflect what is trending at the moment, what's popular. Everything on there is human-made. There's no generative AI video on there or media. So good people for supporting the industry and supporting the creators who make this kind of work. I think that's a really big plus, and you should support platforms that do this kind of thing for sure. To get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head over to storyblocks.com/Alan Schaller or click the link in the description below. So even if you're watching this and you don't have a camera and you're using a phone, you can still learn from this. There are lots of apps available for phones where you can manually take over the settings. Mastering these basics is the fundamentals that I still think about when I'm making images today. Photography is simple. The camera is just a box that gathers light and has different objectives, different lenses that give you different perspectives. It's not like a grand piano, which takes 8 years to master, or a guitar, or cooking. This thing, you can get results, great results on day one. And I think that's one of the reasons why photography is such a popular hobby for people. I got into it precisely for that reason, because it was accessible and you can do it anywhere, and these things are quite small. I didn't have a Leica back then, but started on a Canon camera. And the great thing about photography is that all cameras function in essentially the same way. They all are governed by the holy-trinity. These being, at the top, by no importance order, aperture, shutter speed, ISO sensitivity. These three principles are the most important things to understand, but there are little hidden tricks which hopefully I can help you to master early on and to keep in your mind when you're going out there shooting. So let's start with aperture. Aperture is something that you can control on every lens system from Canon, Nikon, Fuji, Olympus, Pentax, whatever, like all of them. All of them have lenses where you can control the aperture. Some lenses like this, manual lenses where you've got the function actually physically controllable, but most digital cameras, you assign it to a wheel of some sort where you can see on the screen that what number you're on. Aperture. The smaller the number, the more the light gathering that comes into the lens. And if you close down your lens to f11, it's going to be letting in a lot less light than f8, 5.6, f4, f2.8, and so forth. So that's the first thing to think about. Aperture is about light gathering. It also has an effect on your image. It's called wide and stop down. That's what people do. So shooting wide open, that term means using your lens at the smallest aperture possible, which is 1.4, the smallest number. And stopping down means closing the aperture down to, let's say, stopping down to f8 means taking the lens and getting it down to f8. But the question is, what does this do? What it does is it gives you more depth of field. It gives you more that is in focus or sharp, however you want to describe it. So I'm going to show you two pictures now on screen. One is done with a wide aperture. So let's get it on screen. So you can see it's got soft blur, it's got separation, and by separation we mean the subject is separated from the environment around them because they're sharp and everything else is blurred. Now, if we think about this picture, this is with the same lens, same camera, but it's done at a very deep aperture. And this has a lot more detail. You can see stuff from the foreground to the background that is sharp. Okay, now you've got shutter speed, which on the Leicas is this wheel here. Again, on lots of other camera systems, you can access it via a menu or something like this. So all cameras can do it. Shutter speed is how quick the shutter closes to take the picture. So how much light it will let through. So when you've got 1,000th of a second, that means that the shutter will close within 1,000th of a second. If you have it at half a second, the shutter will take half a second to close. And the longer you leave the shutter open, the more light gets let in. So that's the basics. Let's say it's a sunny day, you've got the sun in front of you, and you want to take a picture of the field that you're standing in. So a general rule is that you want to have a fast enough shutter speed to freeze the motion of whatever it is that you're photographing. So if you're photographing a person running, you might want to use a shutter speed of around 1/500th of a second or 1,000th of a second, because it's actually, if you want to completely freeze motion, it's quite fast that you need to go with your shutter speed. This is relative, so if someone is jogging, you won't need such as high a shutter speed as if you've got Usain Bolt running past you at full speed. And likewise, if you're photographing something like a pigeon or a racing car and you want to freeze it in motion at full speed, you're going to want a pretty high shutter speed of 2,000, maybe 4,000th of a second. But if you are photographing a landscape, or if you're using a tripod, then you can shoot at almost any shutter speed because nothing's really moving. The number one rule that you've got to think about is, what do I want to do? Do I want to freeze someone walking? Well, in that case, I've got to make sure that my shutter is at least 250th of a second, right? So that's how you have to think. And this might sound really obvious, but it's good to think about. And then we have ISO sensitivity. ISO controls the sensitivity of the sensor in your camera. And if you're shooting analog, it just denotes the sensitivity of the film that you have purchased. So the higher the number, the higher the sensitivity. And what that translates to in real terms, the higher the sensitivity, the better it is in low light. But you want to keep your camera's ISO as low as you can relative for the scene that you are shooting when you're using digital, and I will explain why. So let's talk about two different kinds of scenarios. One is a bright sunny day, you're outside photographing, and one will be a dark, stormy night. The better the light that you have available, the easier and less stressful life is for your camera, and the more options that you have. So When you're shooting into strong light, you will usually want to keep your ISO, i.e. your sensor's sensitivity, low. So this camera has a base ISO, so the lowest number it can go is denoted by the number 125. And it can go up to over 100,000, which is crazy. For reference, I very rarely use this over ISO 8000. You can do a lot of photography handheld without needing lighting outdoors at night, if you know what you're doing, up to ISO 8000. The lower the ISO, the cleaner the images are presented. If you take a photograph at ISO 200, it's going to be less grainy, less noisy than if you took a picture at ISO 2000, let's say. But if you're in low light, you need that 2000 to boost it up so that you have a more, let's say it's tricking the sensor into thinking there's more light than there is. So it allows you to shoot with a high shutter speed even in poor light conditions or low light conditions. It's all a balancing act, right? And the one thing that you have for free to help your sensor stay low is aperture. So the wider that your lens is able to go in terms of aperture, so this one can go to 1.4, which is really a big light gathering lens, this. Most lenses like zoom lenses, or maybe you've got a kit lens from Canon, which is a very popular lens, the 17 to 55. What's the aperture on that lens? I think it's f2.8 to f4. Those lenses are not as, well, they can't gather as much light as something like this. If you have, let's say, 2.8 lens, and a lens that's like a 28mm 2.8 lens, and that's the widest you can go, it's the most light that you can gather into your sensor. That will give you the best chance at keeping your ISO lower. So if you go from 2.8 to say f5.6 or f8, you close down, you stop down, you're going to be asking the camera to do one of two things. You either need to boost your ISO or you need to cut your shutter speed. For me, the priority is always just making sure that I've got the right shutter speed for the scene. And my priority with aperture is making sure that I have the right depth of field for what I'm trying to achieve with the picture. You can get a lot of different versatile looks out of your camera. But remember, the less light that you're letting in via your lens, either the higher your ISO sensitivity is going to go up, or the lower that your shutter speed is going to have to be in order to capture an image with a nice, clean look. We're going to make a scenario here where it's quite dark and you're photographing some joggers. So this is a scenario where your ISO might have to be quite high, let's say at 1000 or 2000. Your shutter speed should be 1/1000th of a second or 1/500th of a second. If you decide that you want to photograph at night with a high shutter speed and close and restrict the amount of light coming into your lens, then your ISO is going to have to be boosted big time to 10,000, let's say. Some photographers love doing this, and there's nothing wrong with it, but just be prepared to have a file that is a lot more noisy and grainy. A lot of the time though, in good sunlight, outdoors, you can shoot at a low ISO, high shutter speed, and a deep aperture. So when I'm out on the streets in London and the sun's out for the 4 or 5 days a year that you get sun, I'm shooting usually very low ISO, under 400, and my shutter speed can be capped at around 1000, and I could quite happily be stuck at f5.6 and generally get the right kinds of exposures. Now, asterisk, it's actually a lot more complicated than this when you get into fine tuning what it is that you want to do, but we're just talking about pure basics here. Now, there are some photographers who love shooting with slow shutter speeds and blurring and panning with the camera. These are all more advanced techniques, and we have videos on this as well on the channel, which you can have a look at. But I'd say for the beginning, at the beginning of your photographic journey, just learn how to take a nice crisp image, because that's what I I think 95% of the time you're looking just to freeze time with the camera and capture a moment. And so it's important to begin like that and not to go too far down the rabbit hole too soon. I always advise people who are starting out, don't try and run before you can walk. Learn the basics and get that sunk into your brain, because if you try and add all these extra techniques when you haven't built the proper foundation of understanding with the camera, you're going to run into problems. I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about some camera essentials, which you might not have thought about in the giddy excitement of getting the camera. So, number one, spare battery. I swear to God, I've done quite a lot of workshops in my life, and the amount of people who run out halfway through and they're like, oh, I don't normally get through a battery in one day. Well, you don't want to be that person. So getting a spare battery is a must. I have maybe like 10 of these for my cameras because I like to charge loads of them, so I'm not like dependent on if I'm on a shoot or if I'm on a trip. I don't want to have to charge all my batteries constantly. I tend to like go through 4 of them, and then anyway, that's just me. But having spare batteries is a must. SD cards, you want to have a really good sexy disc, and you might want to check because some cameras play better with different brands of SD, or they were developed for that SD card. I find that with my Leica, for example, the SanDisk Extreme Pro super fast ones are the ones that work best, but your mileage may vary. Let's see. So SD cards, spare SD cards, making sure you've got one with enough storage, but not too much storage. So I'll explain why. Let's say you have 1 terabyte on your SD card and you lose your camera and you haven't backed it up because you're like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. You know how people are, I'll do it tomorrow. And you lose it, it's annoying. I tend to prefer sticking with 64 gigabyte cards or 128 gigabyte or whatever it is. What's the next one up?
Yeah,
yeah, quick maths. So yeah, I don't like, there's something wrong about having a terabyte of photography in one card for me. I don't like it. The smaller the capacity and the write speed of the cards, the cheaper that they are. So again, you're going to see some SD cards that have the same amount of storage, but that have vastly different prices. That's probably because of the write speed, i.e. how fast they can transfer the photos from your card to your laptop or computer or whatever it is that you use.
Or from the sensor when you're taking it.
Yes, but that, again, that is, so that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be faster at recording the pictures on your camera. Some, like I said earlier, some SD cards don't play so well with cameras, and I found there are some cards that just weren't developed, or they're newer than the camera that was released, and they don't actually work as well as the slower card, which is a bit strange. But online you can normally find which cards are best for which camera that you have. So you can try that. Another thing, oh, and a nice case if you're traveling around always goes well. Always a good idea. This doesn't belong to me. I don't actually do this, but Biz does. I just keep them like chucked in the bottom of my suitcase. It's terrible. Anyway.
But you should get one of those.
But you should get one of those, and I should get one of those. And Hakuba, if you're watching this, send me one, please. It'd be so nice. Hakuba Matata. Hard drives. Not particularly sexy talking about hard drives, you know, when we could be talking about the new 1.4 lens, but these things are really important. And I always go solid state. Disk drives are dangerous because they can break and they can wipe quite easily if you just throw one down a staircase. So I would recommend getting a solid state hard drive. I love these ones from SanDisk, but there are other ones available. And I tend to buy 2 of these at a time, 2 terabytes, and I double back up. So when I'm backing up my work, put it onto 2 drives at once. This way, and I travel with 1 in my suitcase, 1 in my hand luggage. So if the worst were to happen, probably be safe. And then once I filled them up, I keep 1 in my place in London, and I hide the other one somewhere that I'm not going to tell you. Now we're going to talk about filters. And no, we're not doing a segment into coffee. You see what I did? You might have seen these. It's pronounced UV, not an UV. Okay? An UV filter. Believe it or not, I've had someone say that to me. Do you use UV filters or NDs? I'm like, an UV or a NUD? Anyway, UV filters are the ones that I use. I get asked this question quite a lot. They don't seem to affect the image quality at all. And putting them on the front of your lens is a good idea. I'll tell you why. If something were to hit the front of your camera, like you're walking through a wood, or you're in central London, or your camera swings into a door handle and it makes contact, much better to break a 50 to 100 pound filter. There are cheaper ones, but good ones are usually $50 and above. But it's so much cheaper to replace this than it is to replace a front element of a lens, where you have to send the lens off and it's lengthy wait time and all this stuff. So please use a filter. I tend to not really use lens hoods because they're meant to protect from shade, but if the sun's shining right into your camera, a lens hood doesn't do much in my experience. And at least on stills lenses, I think on cine lenses, they have proper big shades. But like this is the lens hood on this. The only reason I keep this on this camera is because Leica decided with this lens to make what's called a Series 7 filter. So there's no thread. It just drops in. And I really don't like this feature. I love Leica, as everyone knows, right? I'm a big fan. But this idea was not so good, and there must have been a technical reason why they did it like this. But I have to keep the hood on, which doesn't really help with flare, to be honest. But it does, as you can see, maybe if you crop in on this video, you can see that this is damaged to hell, which would have just been damaged to the front of my lens had it not been on. So in a way, I'm quite glad it's there, actually. But I use this lens a lot and have used it for years and years, so that's why it looks like this. Here's a different kind of filter. This is called a variable ND, and these are used quite a lot in the video world, but I love using them on my stills. And what these are, it's a filter which can darken at will. And so it can trick the camera into thinking that it's not as bright as it is. So you might think, why would you need that when you could just change the settings on here, get your ISO lower? Or, well, the answer, this solves a tricky problem, which is when you want to gather a lot of light and have a shallow depth of field in a very bright scenario, and you've maxed out, your shutter speed is as high as it can be, and your ISO is as low as it can go, you've got nowhere left to go. The only thing you can do is whack on one of these and help the camera out, kind of pushing it further. So what do I mean by that? So these can also be used for doing long exposures during the day, and that's why I always have one on me. It's because sometimes I want to create a certain picture that requires this. And honestly, these are all the things that I personally, as a photographer, will take. If you speak to a fashion photographer or someone who's more versed in, I don't know, landscape photography, they might have a different rig to me. But for me, filters, spare batteries, comfortable shoes. It's important to have some good shoes, because if you're doing street photography and you're walking for 6 hours, you don't want to do it in a pair of office shoes, you know, like from those kind of, what are they called? Like brogues. You wouldn't want to walk for 6 hours in brogues unless you've got a very good pair that's very old and comfy. But the point is, comfortable. You want to be comfortable. You want to feel comfortable when you're shooting. That's the priority. And yeah, so I think we've covered quite a lot of the basics of the camera setup. So you've heard it here first. The accessories I recommend, the explanation of the basic settings of a camera and how to approach photography when you're just getting started. And honestly, if you're stuck in a rut with your photography and you've been doing it for a little while, and maybe you haven't focused on this enough, on this stuff I'm talking about, maybe go back to basics and think about it and focus on that. And never forget that photography is all about creating something for a viewer to enjoy. It's not just technique and how to get sharp. Like, that's not important. Always think about what it is you're photographing and make sure your technique is building towards doing something interesting rather than something generic and boring. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you're enjoying the videos. There's a lot of other videos on the channel that go into further detail about some of the stuff we've been talking about, panning, how to make use of light. Have a little deep dive into the channel and have a look, and let us know what you think. If you're enjoying it, give us a like, a lovely comment, or even best, the Holy Grail, subscribe. And drum roll please, found on Storyblocks. The winner of the Oberworth bag for our abstract photography competition is Marius Valen. At first glance, I was like, what is this I'm looking at? And I think all great abstract pictures have a bit of that going on. It's really, really cool. Yeah, just love the tones and the different textures and that angular shape. Just very satisfying picture. Abstract as hell, and loved it. And he wins this delightful, exquisite, expensive Oberworth bag. Well done, Marius. Great shot. Well done to all who entered. Fantastic pictures in there. Loads of them, but loved the nature of that picture that you took, Marius. Enjoy the bag. Hope you make some great use of it. And thank you, Oberworth, for offering this opportunity to a photographer to win one of your lovely, lovely products. So cheers. And what's the next competition? For this month's photo challenge for our Patreon members, we want to see your best use of the aperture technique. Whether it's super shallow depth of field where you're isolating a subject, or whether it's super deep aperture where you're making use of stuff in the foreground and the subjects interacting with different elements, we want to see your most creative use of aperture. The link to enter is via the description below, and thanks to everyone who supports our Patreon. It really helps the channel. And if you are enjoying this YouTube channel, you can find a lot more extra stuff over on Patreon. We release the videos ad-free. We release the videos early on there, and you can take part in photo walks. We've done quite a few of those now. Lots of good stuff going on our Patreon, I think. So have a look, get involved, and thank you to all who support the channel on Patreon. Thank you for watching. Peace out. See you on the next one. Thank
you
for
100,000
subscribers.
It's
a
large
milestone.
See
you
next
time
at
1
million.
Big
love
to
all
of
you.
I did it, Dad.
We did a thing.